Welcome back to Giselle and Alex podcast. Today is episode 5. I like messing that up because it just makes her laugh and giggle a little bit. So I do that consistently. I didn't know what episode we're on.
I hope so because we just recorded it 10 minutes ago.
Yes. Today we're going to start we've been receiving some feedback from listeners, and I told you last time that we're going to dive into it. So today we got a question about dealing with in-laws and family drama. For the sake of privacy, all I'm going to say is thank you, Melanie, for sending this question in.
Privacy for you.
I'm not going to give her her last name.
But you already gave her a name. How's that privacy? Say M. Initial M.
Initial M. Thank you, Initial M, for sending this question in. I'm going to let Giselle kick this one off.
Ooh, fine. Oh, man. Well, if I go back to the start, there was definitely some initial, I feel like, family drama with my future to be in-laws when we first met. I would say mostly with your dad, for sure. Your mom never, I don't feel like she gave me much issues of anything. She was just happy you had someone. But when Alex and I first met, we were training to go to Afghanistan when we were in Afghanistan. And his father always made jokes about me not being a US citizen and me wanting to be married to his son to get a green card. And I mean, the first couple, I brushed them off, and then I was like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. I don't think this is funny, and I don't like this. So I told Alex, I was like, hey, I need you to have a conversation with your dad because this isn't, and granted, like, I don't think Alex was even hearing this. Like, we were talking on the phone, so you usually say it to me. But I told Alex, I was like, I don't know if your dad's joking anymore. Like, I honestly think he thinks that I'm marrying you to become a US citizen. And I'm not. I was like, just let him know I was born in the United States of America and I don't need to marry a white man to have American citizenship. Like, yeah, my parents are Dominican, but they're also US citizens. So yeah, no, that's not the case. Um, yeah, that was not cool. And for me, it's mostly about just setting up those boundaries. Like, obviously, if you're uncomfortable with something, I think what most people struggle with is just being able to draw the line or verbalize that. And at the time, I wasn't comfortable telling him myself. I was a lot younger. Had it happened now, I would have just said it myself. Um, but this kind of learn and grow and earn confidence throughout the years and situations you're put in. Now I advocate a lot louder for myself than I would have in the past. And then once I became a parent, or not even right away, like just in the process of like being pregnant, becoming a parent, talking about certain choices and how we were going to be doing things differently, but definitely like after giving birth and things like that, there was a lot of flack about me speaking only Spanish to the kids and them being like, well, they're never going to learn English. And I always find that hilarious, especially from non-bilingual homes, because anybody from a bilingual home knows that you learn both languages and it is not that difficult, especially when you live in the country that predominantly speaks the other language. It's everywhere. And kids are literally like sponges and they're going to pick it up. So that was my main focus is I'm going to speak just Spanish because I know that English will naturally come and I won't ever have to actually teach my kids English because it's in TV, it's in the playgrounds, it's in here, it's everywhere we went, everything else was in English. So I was like, I'm literally like the only Spanish speaking person in their life. So how are they just not going to speak English? I know they would. And even like with Alex, although almost all their kids except Rumi, all their kids to the age of 2.5 spoke just Spanish, but they understood English. So like if Alex talked to them, they definitely understood what he was saying. That I don't necessarily consider it family drama more than education. It's just something that most people, like I said, they just don't know, they don't understand because they've never been in those situations. And it was just a matter of me like educating and also saying, like, look, that's okay that that's what you think. This is still what I'm going to do because this is my child. And I have always been very clear on just not engaging very far in those conversations. Like I state my stance, and if they want to continue arguing about it, then I let it be a one-sided argument. Can't argue if the other person isn't saying anything back. So I would just be like, okay, and leave it at that and walk away and be like, "Oh, you know, like what you want. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing." And clearly over time, it was obvious that my children could speak both languages. I also grew up with a mom who never spoke English till I was like 9, almost 9 or something like that. And I spoke perfect English because I went to school, because we watched TV, because our friends, because being outside, because everything else was in English, even though at home just Spanish was spoken. We read in Spanish, we wrote in Spanish, like everything we did at home was in Spanish. And so for me, like there was never confusion. I don't recall ever being confused between the two languages or any of that. Like it was just natural because it was from day one for me. Like that's what it felt like. It's like, oh, from right away, like I was learning both languages and that's just the way it went. And very similarly to my children, I think all kids, whenever you're in a bilingual home, they do go through this little stage around 3 or 4 where it might seem like things are getting a little jumbled up and confused, but it's also a big developmental leap of the brain that their brain is like doing a dump of everything that they don't need anymore. So as long as you just stick with both languages, like they will stick and the brain settles out and you don't have a problem after that. But over the years, there's we have never been close to family. So I think that has been a big part of keeping a lot of this at bay. We've only gone for like holidays or big events, things like that. But Alex always being in the Navy, we're always traveling, living on other parts of the world. I mean, things have happened throughout the years. And that's like one of our big takeaways getting older is realizing, at least for us, we don't put family and blood above all else. And in the sense of if something isn't right for us just because they're our family member, it doesn't mean that now we feel forced that we have to spend time with them. So we've learned how to cut ties and move away and create space from family and people that just don't align with who we are and what we want from life, and people who want to cause drama where there is no drama to be caused. We just distance ourselves. Like, okay, cool. Like that's done is done.
I think this is a good question because it's it requires you as a couple. This requires you as couples, as a couple or partners, to communicate your vision and direction on a lot of things. It doesn't mean that that's a firm, like, hey, this is what our belief is, indefinitely, because things do change, right? People evolve, and we start to change our beliefs and our values and things of that nature. But if you as a couple know the direction that you're going with parenting or with finances or with vaccines or with however you're raising your children, when this external source like in-laws or family come in, if it's not in alignment with how you're raising your kids, it's now about, okay, how do you communicate your boundaries in order for them to understand? And a lot of people that I've listened to about this, and like Jasil said, for us, we've kind of distanced ourselves with our family and also communicated pretty well, I think, of our beliefs on how we're raising our kids, you know, hey, this is how I'm raising my kids. I understand that how your beliefs and things of that nature, but this is how I raise my belief or how I'm raising my kids. Now, if you can't like agree with that, or when the kids are with you, if you can't obey that, then what happens is it's more of like a lack of exposure within for us. Like we just pulled back our kids, spending more time with them rather than now they have to come to us. So instead of us just sending our kids away and letting them stay somewhere, with our family or in-laws, now they come to us and we can see our boundaries. We can communicate our boundaries even more. Now, this question can be even more expanded in the sense of maybe this is with your spouse, your partner. Maybe there's causing rift in your partner with your partner, or your sisters coming in, or your brothers, whatever the case may be. It's about being able to communicate as a couple and getting clear on your direction and your vision together within that. And then being able to communicate your boundaries. And if they do violate that, in my opinion, or if they don't listen to it, then you have to follow through with how that plays out, so to speak. You have to follow through with what your intended action was.
I also learned like very early on with certain family members that want to ask questions. And when you say things that are not in agreement with their beliefs, they just want to argue, then I stopped having conversations with those people. When they ask me those questions, I'd be like, look, you're not going to like what I have to say. So let's not discuss it, because I am okay for healthy debating. It's not that I want everyone to agree with what I say. I have nothing against people who do not agree with what I say. But if we cannot respect each other, if we cannot have a healthy debate, then I'm not going to engage in that. And that was something like early on I learned with his family. We were at his parents' house and we were discussing, and it was a hypothetical for the future of a child that I didn't even have yet, and it turned into a really nasty argument of like people cursing at each other and saying all sorts of nasty things. And I was just like, I'm not engaging in this. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, if we cannot just sit here and like have a hypothetical discussion of something that hasn't even happened, and my views are so polarizing and opposing to yours that it has to turn into this, then I distance myself. I stop talking. I stop saying my opinions. I stop, having those conversations because it's not worth it to me. Now, I know this can be very different for people who live very close to family members, and it might be harder. But I think the biggest thing, once again, is boundaries. I think that what most people struggle with is actually setting and being clear on their boundaries, and also speaking up to that adult, to whoever it is, because we were taught to respect our elders, and our elders are so wise, and they have all this thing that we can learn from them, and we should listen to them and respect them. And I'm not saying that I am against that, but I no longer have a problem telling an elder or an adult in my family, hey, you know what? I don't agree with that. Or I don't want you telling my kids about that or teaching them about that. Like, a big thing is we're not religious. We're not Christians. We're not Pentecostal, anything like that. But my parents are. And one of my parents' favorite things is to give them Bibles and read them about the Bible and make them pray and close their eyes and this and that. And for me, I was like, you know what? I'm drawing the line, because that's not something we teach at home. Granted, if that is something that my children are looking for, asking for, they're truly intrigued about, I have no issue them learning about it. Like, I've told them, you are open to learning about whatever religion or habits they want to. Like, I'm not going to stop them from doing that. So if they truly go to my parents and they're like, hey, I'm really it's interested in your religion and your Bible and why you guys do these things, like, go for it. But teaching it to them in a form of fear is not gonna work for me. Like, if you're teaching my kid, hey, if you don't do this, if you don't listen to this, like, and unfortunately, especially from my mother's church and background that I went to for many, many years, and it's still a lot of the same people, it's this fear-based religious teaching. If you don't do these things, you know, right away, it's like hell and torture for the rest of your life and this and that. And I'm just like, I'm not raising my kids that way. I'm not raising my kids to believe in those things in that sense. So I do believe that we need to speak up when things are out of alignment. And once again, they're crossing boundaries, just like I tell my mom, I don't go to your house and sage it or do any types of, prayers or meditations or things that you wouldn't like in your house. So same rules apply to mine. Like if you come to my house, I don't want that done inside my home either.
I think it's important to have rules of the road, especially with this topic. And what I mean by that is, I'm a believer. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right. So, like, what's going to happen is we, and it's happened in our relationship with her in-laws, my in-laws. We don't put any boundaries up at first. We just kind of
Yeah.
let it happen. It flows, and then when we see things that we don't like, that's where we have to now come in and say, okay, hey, we're not doing this, or I didn't like when you did this, or we don't let the kids have candy, or that, blah, 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 blah. Like it can go on. And as we form these rules of the road, or these bumpers, so to speak, that's how we operate within the relationship. So I can't expect to meet my parents or even meet her parents on a level that like they can't meet me at, right? I have to meet them where they are at, but also understand that I when we have these rules of the road, it's not like I'm cutting them out of my life. I'll still have a conversation. I'll still have conversations, and call, and the kids can call and things of that nature. But when we were talking about like reduced exposure, it's more of like sending our kids, allowing them to be there by themselves with these in-laws or family members that are out of alignment of what we are, because we can't trust that they follow that. And
And by no means do I expect anyone to parent exactly like us. But for us, like there's certain things that are just like non-negotiable. Like, no, that cannot happen no matter what. Like for instance, for me, especially when it came to like my the way I grew up, I loved spending time with my grandma. Like those are some of my best memories as a kid, was like going and spending summers with my grandma, with all my cousins and playing. And we've tried to leave our kids a few times with my mom and my dad. And the kids come back with all these stories about their grandma. Like she's hitting me with a chancleta, she's screaming at us, she's doing this, she's doing that. And my thing is, it's like, no, I don't want my kids to have that as their memories with their grandparents of them getting spanked and hit and verbally, abused. And granted, like it's her own shit that she needs to figure out and she probably won't in this lifetime. But my thing is if that is your default, then now I have to draw that boundary. I have to draw that line. Now you lose privilege to having your grandkids over for a week or two just for us to get away and be by
no.
ourselves. Like, no, I'm good.
Well,
Like,
and
I'm not going to do that.
the thing as well is, like, you notice the switch, the difference in the fact that when we're there, she has more patience.
Yeah.
So when you hear these stories,
Like, it didn't happen in front of us. It
yeah,
happened when we were not present. So I was like, okay, what's the difference between our presence versus us not being present? Like, why are these things happening when we're outside of the picture? So I was like, I'm not okay with that.
yeah. And it's
So
important, like these rules of the roads, they have to be communicated amongst the two, like husband and wife, and that can transcend, excuse me, over any external force trying to come in and maybe go against your boundaries or your will. It could be a sister, it could be a brother. Like really having this, I say vision, but how we are raising our kids in all
and
aspects.
also like for me, a big struggle of that is like I would love to sit here and say, well, it's just my mother doesn't know a different way. That's just the way she was raised. That's the way it is. And for a lot of our parents, that is true. But my mother works in the public education system and has so for the past 20 something years. And she has the patience at work. And she's actually loved by all the parents and coworkers at work. So for me, I was like, if you can do this 8, 10 hours a day at your job, you can do this in your house with your own grandkids. So to me, I was like, I don't know what kind of like, split is going on in the brain of I could do this at work, but I can't do this in my own house, or what's going on there. But that's also, I think, what has hurt me the most. It's like I know you know how to do this the right way, and I know you know how to do it because you wouldn't have a job right now if you did.
No.
So
I want to go a different route with this too and just bring this out, because it's easy to talk about kids because we can pull back a little bit, right? But when Liam passed away, there was a decision that had to be made with regards to, does he want to be, do we cremate him or do we bury him? And for her side of the family, they were against cremation because of religious purposes. And that was something that I had her mom reach out to me and like hit me. I say hit me, but like more message me and try to ask me all these questions and like, hey, we should bury him here. We should do this. We should do that. And it's important, and I use this terminology the last 20 minutes, but also specifically a lot of the times is communicating our vision as a couple, because I don't have to live with her mom. I don't have to live with her dad or my sisters or her sisters. I have to live with with my wife, and I'm in relationship with my wife. So it's important to communicate where she's at in this decision making process and where I'm at. And at that time, she looked at me, just still looked at me, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to leave this to you to make this decision." So now I am comfortable in my own ability and my intuition of like, hey, I'm going to make the right decision no matter what for my immediate family. And I think that in relationships, we get caught up in valuing our in-laws or our our family members because we've been raised with them and that's how we've been conditioned. Like family is everything. And I'm not sitting here saying that there's not truth to that, but like we were saying at the very beginning of this, we are starting to realize that sometimes family is the thing that is holding us back from transcending to the next level because we've been conditioned, our values, our beliefs come from our first 7 years of life most of the time. And when we start to grow and evolve and get curious, like the theme of our podcast, things start to open up for us and how we want to raise our family and how we want to evolve as humans. So it's important to ask, am I making this decision for me or am I making this for other people? We are conditioned to, a lot of people are people pleasers. So sitting with what is coming on inside your head and saying, okay, is this a decision that I'm making for my mother-in-law or my father-in-law or whoever it may be external of my family, or is this truly a decision from me, for my family, what's best for my family? And that's where this decision about Liam, I had to sit with it a lot. And I had to ask myself, what feels right for my family and I? And I made the decision of cremation. And then I also made the decision, there was some things I was talking with my wife. We had some family drama come up with our young son's passing of people, wanting to come to this service that we were not in agreement with, we weren't on good terms with. And we had to get very clear with our close immediate family of saying, like, hey, this is this is a boundary. They're not welcome here. And I'm sorry, but I'm firm in that.
And I got shit from both of my parents. I'm talking about 2, 3 weeks after my son passed away, basically telling me that I was being inconsiderate, that I wasn't thinking about the other family members' feelings, that how could I do that in a time like this, that this is not the time to bring up that drama. And I looked at my father to his face and said, those are your beliefs, and I have mine, and I stand true, and this is where I hold the line. And I said, if you guys want to do that, you're welcome to go have your own service wherever you want. But this is the service that I put together, and I'm going to say who comes in and who doesn't. And that person is simply not invited here. I, yeah, I have a hard time, even in moments and situations like this, simply forgetting what people have done in the past and simply forgetting who someone is, like their character. And once again, in a situation like that where we're in vulnerability, we're in sadness, we're mourning, Hispanics have this big thing of everyone's invited and anybody can come. To me, that is a sacred space that we get to curate and hold, and we get to allow who comes into that or not. And like I've told Alex, if it really meant that much to that person, they can have their own ceremony wherever they are. Like if it's truly to honor the soul that has passed, then great, have your own ceremony, do your own thing. But that doesn't mean that I have to invite you into my space. And it's not that I'm holding a grudge, that I'm mad, that I wish bad upon this person. That's just not who I am. I really don't care. I wish them the best. I think that their life turns out amazing. and that they do well in life. That's but to me, it's not someone I want to be around. It's not someone that I want my kids to be around. And it's just that simple for me. Like that's where I draw the line. That's where I have a boundary. That's
Yeah. And then another good example of this, and I don't mean to shift, but like another example is a lot of times, and I've heard this from young couples, is like, man, I just want to do something small, but my family wants to do something big. Like we have to have this big ceremony. And that's where it's important for the question that I would push to anybody that's listening that's under this is you have to redefine what family is. And not necessarily like your mom and your dad and your sisters and brothers aren't family, but if you are in a relationship with it, now you're creating a family. So Giselle and I are in a relationship, we have kids, that is our immediate family. That is our new family that we now have to make decisions in the best interest of. So, with regards to the marriage piece and having a wedding, is now you're creating this new immediate family. What is it that you two want? Not what your mother-in-law or your sisters or your brothers. And it's challenging to voice that once you make the decision, but it's important that if you, it's like a skill. You have to know what you want as a couple, and then
I mean,
once you start to communicate that, you start to be able to
the way I
communicate more.
think about it is, like a CEO of a company, right? Like your parents are the CEO, but once you move out and you create your own family, you get married. Now you're the CEO of this new company. It's like, do you still go to the other company, ask them like, hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, what do you guys think? No, this is your company. You're the CEO. You call the shots. You're the owner. You are now the business owner. But that's what a lot of us have been taught to just listen to our parents and to please them. And it's this people pleasing thing of like, if we don't live up to our parents' expectations, then they're not going to be happy with us or how we turned out. And like I said, younger years, that was a lot harder for me to do than now, many years later. So it is something that I've learned throughout the years. But just knowing like if your family truly cares about your best interest, then they're not going to be mad about the decision that you made. Like they'll get over it. Whatever it is, they'll get over it.
Yeah.
So make the decision that you have to make. If you have to explain it, explain it. If explaining it is going to create more drama, then don't. But do what you have to do. If they really can open their mind to different things and they'll be able to say, you know what? I can see why they did that. I can see why that was in best interest for them to do than just to do what pleases us. Because at the end of the day, the ones that have to sleep together and be together is you and your spouse.
Yeah.
Not you don't go home to your in-laws, you don't go home to your parents, you go home to your
And
spouse.
this is a good test of unconditional love, right? Because they talk, parents with children, and I'm using the word parents because you talk about in-laws, and the question is, like, they're going to love you either way. Does it mean that they're going to agree with you? No. And going back to just because you disagree and you have boundaries and you've communicated these boundaries doesn't mean that you stop talking. Now, that can be a decision that you make if you want, but reality is you can still have conversations. You still can be relational. It's about voicing where you are at in your process and what you value and your boundaries.
I mean, if they respect you, they'll they'll be okay with it. And that's like one thing I talk to him now, like we're raising our kids in a very specific way. And I said, I know with especially the amount of kids we have, they are not gonna all be the same. They are not all gonna agree with what we do. We might have a kid that goes the complete opposite spectrum of what we've done. And I was like, and we need to respect that. And we need to be okay with that because that's just life. Like every generation, what do they say? Oh, this generation doesn't know anything. Oh, they blah blah blah. They're so lost. It every generation's gonna change. We're never gonna be the same. I don't expect my kids to be like me. I don't expect their kids to be like us. Everybody's going to be different. I think that the biggest thing here is just to realize that everybody is where they're at. And sometimes they cannot, no matter how you explain it or say it to them, they cannot see where you are and the way you see things. And that's something that I've come to realize with my own parents is they are where they are. They're stuck in their era, they're stuck in their beliefs. And there's some things that sometimes they can see, maybe over time it gets like proven that it works, but there's some things that they just can't see past. And I don't try to force it. I'm just like, look, this is the way I'm going to do it. I know it doesn't make sense to you, and that's okay. And that's that.
And like I said, they come, her parents come and they visit us. And we don't always have deep conversations, but there's times where I say she, the in-laws come and they try to approach us about the religion topic. And we ask simply, okay, well, like, our views haven't changed. You know, don't waste your breath. And they've navigated that, right? Like they're like, okay, you know what? Let me just stop. And so it's like it's once again, I want to make sure that anybody that's listening, we're not saying that you have to full cut off communication. It's just about being able to articulate your boundaries and still stay in relationship.
with
And this is all subject to change. I'm a firm believer that a healthy boundary is a flexible boundary. So, you know, if you put a rigid boundary up, you know, right away, it's going to be hard to let them in. But if they respect that boundary, you can start to relax and allow them to come in closer as they build trust with you. So if my mother-in-law was to come back and we obviously see some progression and she respects how we raise our kids, just like my father as well. Like I'm not just picking on my mother-in-law in there, but if they were to respect how we raise our kids, then we could renegotiate and look at how things are. I would still be there for a lot of the
But I
implementation
mean,
process.
let's talk about that, right? Your parents or your stepmom and your dad, it's been somewhat of an estranged relationship for the same things that we're talking about because they have been unwilling, in a sense, to respect or even like see our kids as full humans sometimes, and their expectations of what a child acts like, behaves like, is unrealistic. And it's very old school mentality of don't be seen, don't be heard, don't be, anything. And it's like, well, I have a lot of kids. That's very difficult for me to go into any place and for my kids not to be seen, heard, like anything. So why would I constantly put myself in that situation to be aggravated, to be stressed out, to feel anxious of like, what are they gonna say next? What are they gonna do next?
Yeah.
Who's gonna scream? Who's gonna lose their shit? It's like, okay, then I just rather send you pictures and see you online and we'll see you when we see you. Like I'm not gonna make an effort to now go out of my way to go visit for that. And
And that's the thing with us too, is like they're not trying to make that effort to open their eyes and understand our side. So we don't put ourselves in that situation. But if my father or my stepmom was like, "Hey, can you come? We really would love to have you over for Thanksgiving or whatever the case may be," I would go. I would consider it. I wouldn't stay in their house. I'm not putting myself in situations to where I could even fall back into my kids being subject to that environment. I wouldn't stay at their house. I'd visit them for a lot of times, and then we would leave.
that's like another thing, like knowing so many people when you visit family, it's so easy, like, oh, just stay in their home. But if you know that there's extra drama and there's extra things, just don't. If you can't rent your own place, stay somewhere else, then consider not going or saying, you know what, I think it's best that we wait for a time that we can both rent something out and that we're not in your space to cause more issues because there's some family members that can only take 60 minutes of seeing kids or 120 minutes of seeing kids. And they cannot spend it all day in waking hours because they're just not used to it. It's not their part of their lifestyle. They don't actually enjoy that. And knowing that and being able to identify that as a parent, that even though sometimes in-laws might have a desire to be around kids, they might not have the actual capacity to do that.
Yeah. And then keeping with what we've been, I say what we've been talking about, something that's common in my life with regards to being victims versus creators. Like you can say, why are my in-laws like this? Or why are they always on me and be pissed off about it and be in this negative mood? Or once again, you can get clear on the life that you want to create for yourself, for your children, and and then put yourself in that environment. Now, once again, I'm clear not to cut off the communication, but you can also tailor your own narrative in that regards, putting yourself in the environment like we were talking about, rather than, oh, it's easy to stay at their house. And then you go there and shit hits the fan and you're pissed off and you have a whole different thing on your side. So I think it's big pieces understanding your vision on where you want to be within your parents or with your kids, raising your kids, and then also when these challenges come, having those conversations with your spouse.
And also with the person, I think that that's the hardest one that most people skip over is having a clear conversation with the person that you're having issues with. And it doesn't need to be an argument. You could just say, hey, do you have a moment for me to say something that's on my mind that I want to make clear? And state your boundary. Don't make it an argument. Don't make it a conversation. Just say, look, this is my stance on this right now. And I don't agree with whatever it is that your boundary that they're crossing. So therefore I will be, pulling back or blah blah. Or if this is too much for you to respect, then we're gonna give limited time on this, whatever it is. But also just being clear, very clear on that. And I think that that's the biggest, hardest conversation. Like when my kids started telling me that my mom was doing these things, like it wasn't right away. It was like after a few repeated times of us leaving them, for amounts of hours or overnights, our son started screaming and crying, complaining that he didn't want to go. And we're like, why not? And that's when it came out. And when it came out, what did I do? I had a conversation with her. I called her up and I said, look, we would love to do this, but we can't because this and this and this. And she said, oh, well, it wasn't like that. Of course, she tries to explain and defend herself or whatever. I was like, look, I'm just letting you know that you're going to see a change in this because of this. I said, whether you want to agree with it or not, that's on you. But I'm just letting you know this is where I stand. And it wasn't an argument. I didn't argue with her whether she did it, whether my son was lying, whether she was lying. I didn't argue any of that. I just said, this is what happened. This is the boundary. And yeah, that's literally what happened after that. The kids have not been staying overnight or doing anything of that sort. And maybe when they get older, things will be a little different. But also, like we have a challenging 7-year old still that we know, and we don't trust many people with her because of that. Because we know she is very challenging to be around, and we're the ones who know her best. So
I want to say that we do practice this with our kids in a sense as well. And this is something that you can take away in your own family. And what kept coming to mind for me is Justin and I have our own beliefs as we talked about how we want to raise our kids and how we are raising our kids. And that doesn't mean that we are dictators in our house. And I'm going to give an example. I'm not a big believer in processed sugar and soda and all that other stuff. So I don't buy that for my kids. Now, when people do, for instance, we were in another city in Dominican Republic a couple days ago, and soda was bought, and my son and my kids wanted it, and they're looking at hesitation. They're like, I don't want it, I don't want it, but then they see someone drink it, and they want it immediately. So I'm like, look, it's your body. There's consequences for you putting it in your body. That's not something that I'm willing to do or where I'm at in my life at this point. And I'm not shaming them. They drank it and then we carried on, right? It's just about educating them on regards to a boundary that I have. And I hope that the lesson that's learned in that is that I'm communicating a boundary that I have for myself. And that even though that they drink that soda and that's not how we're raising them, that the the fact that I communicated a boundary that I had and they saw me follow through on that boundary is where I'm at. And with all of this tying this into is the growth mindset. So many people don't communicate these boundaries and stand and actually enforce the boundaries within their families and their in-laws. And when I was saying earlier that sometimes families are the ones that are holding us back, we stay in these cycles. We continue these cycles, these generational cycles. And implementing what we're talking about is this growth mindset and helps you break those cycles. It helps you to create this life that you're wanting to live and taking the steps towards ending whatever generational cycle it may be. So I see it in that way too because we're raising our kids so polar opposite of what we are, but with a little bit of in between at times on certain things, but understand we're doing this from choice and with education and understanding.
and I think the last thing I'll say about the whole family drama or in-laws and things of that nature is I think we're all responsible for our side of our family. So if you see that your family is doing or saying something, or your spouse has brought up something that's making them uncomfortable, also you being the buffer of having that conversation with that family member, because a lot of times that it is easier, like it is harder for you to go to your spouse's family and say, hey, call that person out on whatever it is. They might take it wrongly. So like just having a conversation with your spouse, like, look, this has been going on, or this was said. I'm not okay with this. Like, do you mind having a conversation with this person about it? If it's something that needs to be addressed right away, maybe your spouse, advocates for themselves. But for me, especially like I said early on, it was hard to have those conversations because I didn't know his family. I didn't know how they would react to the way I would have handled a situation I've always been known for being a very straightforward, blunt person, and not everybody takes that the right way. So I was like, look, it's your family, you know them, can you deal with this? Like I don't know how to say this without offending someone or making someone feel bad about this. So can you be the one to handle it? Same thing with my family. If my family was doing or saying something to him that he didn't like, I'd be the one like, hey, that's not okay for you to say these things. Like, or you make him feel a certain type of way when you do these things. And same thing with when it's been with my kids and my parents. Like I've been the one who's addressed it with them. Granted, we're on the same page and they know that. So like if it were to come up to him, it's like, hey, we're equal stance on this. Like we're a team. This is where we stand on it. So I think having that united front, but if you need to be the one to speak to the family member, then I think communication is definitely number one and key, and not getting angry about it. Like when we're communicating these things, is not to argue, it's not to get mad, it's not to make the other person feel like shit. It's simply to state where you're at and where you draw your
Yeah, you're
lines.
not attacking, you're just
Yeah.
stating your truth, right? You're like, hey, um, I feel this when this and this, these are the things, these are how we're raising our kids, or this is how we are in our relationship, whatever the case may be. And just saying that's out of alignment of who we are, who we are becoming. And it's not attacking. It's more of I say a gentle, but it's more of a gentle way to say it. And then once again, it's that strike one, strike two approach of, hey, the first time you didn't say anything, but then you knew after it happened. And now if they do it again, that's when you're like, okay, I told you the way that I was, how we're raising our kids. And because of this, we're just going to pull back a little bit. We're not coming over here. We're not leaving our kids with you, or whatever the case may be, and following through with that action.
Yeah. But
So hopefully that answers your question.
yeah, I didn't have any other specifics to let us know.
Yes, yes, yes. So please don't forget to send us some feedback, ask us questions. This was a fun topic. I think it went really well, and we'll see you next time.
You done? I like how you're evaluating yourself. I'm done. Are you done? Yes. Get it. Get it. Stop.